Hello, Marvel Avengers Alliance fans. It is G for G. It is Napalm Dawn. And today I'm going to go over some of the pieces of gear that I'm looking forward to re-getting when Redux fully goes live, after all the betas are done and after the game is opened up to us. This is the list of things that I want to go for and farm and get as drops from Spec Ops and Chapter Mastery and things like that. In this video, it is only going to be gear. It's not going to be characters or EISOs and AISOs and everything like that, although I may mention them in passing in relation to the gear. But I wanted to discuss with you guys the things that I'm most looking forward to getting back into my inventory the way that I had in Marvel Avengers Alliance before the game died. One of the pieces of gear is revenge gear, because I didn't get it from a PvP season where I was actively striving for it, and then it showed up in incursions and I never got it to drop from incursions. And basically it was like that one person who beats you when going up a ladder, and then you're at the top of the ladder and you're always seeking revenge on that person for that one loss and you never get it. Before I get into the video, something, the needless disclaimers that I need to say, except they're very needful every single time. No, I do not have any ETA on the next beta, whether the next beta will be beta 6 or beta 5.75. No, I don't know when the full game will be released. No, there isn't going to be a mobile version of it. The comments continue on my YouTube videos about mobile versions and everything, and on Facebook, and it's getting so overwhelming. I think I've pulled out every single last strand of hair on my body at the frustration that people just don't want to listen for some particular reason. But okay, I regrow hair, so we'll be good in that regard. So that is the disclaimers out of the way. Don't ask about any timelines. Don't ask about mobile versions. And the most recent version of the game is 5.2 as of the filming of this video. It's available for PCs and Macs. Do not ask about other operating systems, including Chrome. Don't try and get smart with me and be like, well, Chrome's not exactly a mobile operating... Yeah, basically it is. Don't ask about it. Macs, PCs, and Linux, if they can do Windows or Mac emulation. So let's get into it. One of the early pieces of gear that I really liked in PvP before I became good enough to get adamantium consistently were pieces of the Vindication set. I used the Power Cell and the Stalker on offense, and then the Power Cell and the Void Generator on defense. So the Power Cell here at its most upgraded is a 2-round cooldown and creates a high capacity charge. When you combine the high capacity charge with the Stalker, what it does is it pops one member of the enemy team. That enemy cannot be stealthy, and anytime they attack, they get countered by enemies, meaning your team, with surveillance. When you do the high capacity charge, your whole team has surveillance put on them. That means anytime the enemy attacks, your whole entire team counters them. So if you do things like Rocket Raccoon and Union Jack and Spider-Man Noir, you have a chance to create incredible chains of follow-up and counterattacks. Also, if you have people who counterattack with things that cause debuffs like bleeds and everything like that, this is a nightmare, and it's a very underrated set that just nobody really remembers, nobody talks about, nobody uses, but it has a high degree of application. The Void Generator, which I said I used to use on PvP defense, when it consumes a high capacity charge, puts a shield on the entire team that absorbs damage. It removes and prevents debuffs as long as the shield is up. And if anybody attacks somebody who has the shield up, they have a buff removed. So essentially it is a mid-fight Mystic. If you started the battle with the Mystic, and then when the Mystic wore off, you use the Void Generator, and then, or excuse me, the MK3 and then the Void Generator, you're essentially reapplying a Mystic. Interesting, but it also has the bonus of applying a shield, and it can go ahead and remove debuffs that are already on there. So if somebody managed to land a debuff on you in between that and the Mystic, you can get it removed. The Devourer. I absolutely love this sword to death. If this sword was a pet, I would love it. I would treat it the most amazing way you can imagine treating a pet. The Devourer is what I like to call the hardest working weapon in the business. This thing never seemed to have taken a nerf. I can always count on the Devourer to do exactly what it's supposed to do, and that is to counter bleeding enemies and follow up on my teammates when they attack bleeding enemies. If you combine this with something like the Black Knight, who makes slashing weapons cause a stack of bleeding, and this also causes bleeding, you get 2 stacks of bleeding. This is a great weapon. The only thing that's rough about it is that it is AoE and it is not subtle. So when you see things like the Hugin's Eye coming around, or the Elite ISO, which causes drains on melee attacks and everything, this could be problematic. However, it is magic, and I'm going to jump ahead in my list a little bit since we're going to talk about magic, and jump right into an item called the Crooked Branch, which came from Spec Ops 15. The Crooked Branch is another very underrated piece of gear that not a lot of people got, not a lot of people ever talked about, but it is broken like you would not believe. Crooked Branch, when you use it, every 2 rounds, it's a quick action, and it causes reverberation on the enemy team and a positive reverberation on your team. When it hits the enemy, it says anytime they use a tech ability, damage gets caused. That's okay. But reverberation on your team says anytime you use a magic ability, you get a heal. That includes countering with the Devourer. So if you were to use the Crooked Branch, and then your agent followed up or countered 3 times with the Devourer for any particular reason before reverberation falls off, you're going to get a heal. Why I say the Crooked Branch is broken is there's an ISO out there that says if you do something magic, you'll get a heal. The thing is, it has limits. Not everything that you do is magical procs that ISO. However, anything magical procs the Crooked Branch. So if you use the ISO that makes your attacks magical, I think it's an Infiltrator ISO. I don't remember if it was Sudarasu. Let's check out Sudarasu. Equip, no, that was unarmed as stealthy. I think it was an Infiltrator related ISO. I think I remember it being like purpley pink. It basically says your attacks become magical. When you use the Crooked Branch with it, oh boy, everything you do causes a heal. Phenomenal piece of gear, especially if you use it with things that boost healing, like I believe Angel does, and one of the staffs do. The Shepherd staff, maybe? I keep searching in the wrong era. Up next, the Chalice of Souls, which came from the Son of the Demon set, Spec Ops 11. Chalice of Souls, everybody ignored this thing. Nobody touched this thing whatsoever, because what it does is you have to die. The agent has to die within a certain period of time, and then when a member of your team acts, they bring the agent back. In other words, they're reaching literally into the river Styx, and they're kind of plucking you out and bringing you back to life. Now, you might think, well, what good is that? What is the chances your agent's going to die in round 1 before the friendly that you put the Chalice of Souls onto gets their action. And that is to commit suicide. We'll go into this in a different video, but the phylactery can res under circumstances in which nobody else in the game can res. Not Valkyrie, not Angel, not Phoenix. Anything in the game that causes a dead player or dead agent to come back to life, there are certain rules that go into effect in the game that once you were dead, you were like dead. And the suicide is one of them. The Chalice of Souls is the single most broken piece of gear in the game because it brings the agent back no matter what. It can be relied on to do its job under 100% of the circumstances. It's nuts. I will talk about that in a bit of a different video. When MAA was live, I did several videos on suicide teams. You'll just have to look them up if you want to spoil it. The Source of the Nile is another piece of gear that I would like to get. However, the Source of the Nile has some duplicates. Not only does it have the Breath of the Nile and the Key of the Nile and everything like that, there's another piece of gear that does what the Source of the Nile does. It says all enemies get energy feedback where they get popped for damage if they do an energy attack. Your allies get healed if they do an energy attack. Now, there is another piece of gear out there that I also want to get that does the exact same thing, and it was called the Rectifier. This I had. All allies get the Rectifier buff that says energy attacks gain guaranteed hit and increased chance of crit, and they heal, and it causes the same energy feedback. Why this piece of gear is so incredibly good is if the enemy has static charge, energy feedback fires. So if you manage to get static charge on the enemy team and they start doing actions and they're passing around static charge and everything, and the Rectifier debuff is on them or the Nile debuff is on them, energy feedback, anytime they proc static charge, they'll take extra damage. So it's this incredible amount of free passive damage. Which leads me to talk about the infamous static charge combo gear. This was a set of gear that crashed the game when used with Beta Ray Bill and Electro for a little while in PvP. Those who were using this combination on defense got smacked down by Playdom. They suffered bans because they were knowingly and willingly exploiting the game by running this gear on defense, which would cause PvP to crash, which means the defensive team would automatically win. So this is a 4-part combo. Rectifier was part of it, but not super necessary, but the next 3 pieces of gear are. So part 1 was the dense Electro Tech Hammer. It causes static charge on one enemy, but it's a 2-round cooldown to use this thing. Also, tech upgrade gets put on the agent. Wide Open is pretty solid. Winded is, it's okay. But really, this was a piece of gear that got out static charge. So this is part of the combo here with Beta Ray Bill and Electro, or Beta Ray Bill and even Victor. The Thunderstrike was a similar looking piece of gear that also caused static charge, but it didn't have a cooldown. So you could use it when the dense one was on cooldown and continue static charge. And then you had the Roaring Thunder, which came from Spec Ops 15. This was based on Thor, whereas the Crooked Branch was based on Loki. All allies get Storm Herald, and they get a chance to follow up Lightning Strike when attacking with or being attacked by single target attacks, causes static charge. Everybody gets strengthened. So when people start passing around the static charge and everything, the Roaring Thunder was a massive part of this combination over here that would just cause incredible amounts of damage. And if you got deeper into the game and picked up the gear that causes ozone, which makes electrical damage hurt more, even better. Crazy combo. It's a very sit back and watch with popcorn kind of gear. Beyond Corp can opener. This is my revenge gear. In PvP Season 12, I was trying very hard to get this weapon because I had a feeling it would come in handy very soon. Didn't get it, never got it out of the incursions and everything. One of the few pieces of gear that causes mechanical stress, which says the cooldown of all executed abilities except recharge is increased by 1 round. So if you hit somebody who does a 2-round cooldown on something, it becomes a 3-round cooldown. It melts armor, and it does shield breaker. Thematically, this piece of gear dropped right before the arcade Spec Ops, where everything was a robo enemy, meaning mechanical. This thing did mechanical stress. I thought it was fantastic content planning over there. To have this drop right before you were facing mechanical enemies. I still want this piece of gear, revenge gear. The Jade Prism, otherwise known as the free action version of the Emerald Prism. It is no secret that the Emerald Prism video that Kingfisher did with Black Bolt and Thing was the very reason I started putting together crazy teams in Marvel Avengers Alliance and then started doing videos. The Prism made Molly Hayes the most destructive force of nature you can imagine. And because it's a free action version, you can essentially begin to duplicate that with other characters that have lots of attacks or follow-ups or defend a lot of times. It'd be good for like Rocket Raccoon and Hogun and Spider-Man Noir, just people who take constant attacks or defend constantly. Unfortunately, once the stamina nerf went into effect in PvP, I could no longer pull off the crazy combo, but I have reams and reams of Molly Hayes jacked up to galactic Hulk levels of proportion, just totally attack and accuracy values off the charts because of her going into the tantrum while under the effects of the Jade Prism. And absolute nightmare. I mean, I'm talking critting people for 6 digits in PvP. One of the other pieces of gear that I want, this was much later in the game, was the Wubb Wob device, which if you are an Overwatch player and look at that icon, you're going to be like, hey, that looks familiar, and it is confirmed to be based off of Lucio's Sonic Cannon. Piece of trivia for you, the devs, and one of them actually just responded to a thread on Marvel Avengers Alliance Redux's Facebook today. One of the devs has confirmed that Playdom was in love with Overwatch back in 2016, and they played it in the office a lot. They enjoyed the FPS shooter from Blizzard tremendously, and they wanted to honor their love for Overwatch, so they lifted a gun design from Lucio, a healer or support from Overwatch, and they put it in the game. This has some good synergy with, of all people, Songbird. Fun little gadget, but not really talked about or used. I just want to get it because I share the love for Overwatch too. Going back to the early parts of the game, the custom only for killing, or the Kofik. This gun is basically Emma Frost in a gun. It has no cooldown, and it causes mental anguish, very similar to the mental tap of Emma. Nice weapon. It's a psychic energy attack, so it gets around a lot of things. High crits, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. So this thing critting high doesn't mean that much, but it's basically Emma on a stick. And that is always handy to be able to duplicate her strongest ability and move it on the agent. Here is a piece of gear that I actually never did get, but I saw an agent use it in defensive PvP one time, and I had to quit the battle. Blink Boots. It could be used every 2 rounds, and it makes the agent phased, aka intangible. Now, here's what was neat about it. I respect this person's intelligence like you would not believe to set up this team and this agent that way. He choked his agent out with subtle and passive gear so that the AI made the agent in defensive combat use the blink boots every time it was up, and then it did nothing but subtle things while the agent was phased, and I couldn't touch him because I didn't have any magic or psychic attacks. I had to quit the battle because there was no way for me to win. I had a chance to break the cycle early on, but I didn't realize what was happening, and I didn't take advantage, and I was focusing on other members of their team, and I wound up, messing that up. So I know they used the blink boots, and I know they used the signpost, which is subtle, and then I think it was maybe something like the Hugins Eye, which is a passive, and all you need to do is like the signpost, blink boots, and 2 pieces of special functionality gear that don't get activated, like the Hugins Eye, the Moonin's Eye, the E-Tech Shield, things like that, and you will stay phased forever unless you have magic or psychic attacks, or the cube and the blackest void, and you take away the intangible buff, which I did not have at that time. Speaking of which, yes, I would have to say the weather control device, the cube, and the mystic are also give-me's that I want to go ahead and get, but these are more fun and interactive things than that. The restored Wellrod Silence Pistol. And you're going to be like, Napalm, what the hell are you talking about? What is this dinky little gun? Why do you want it? What's so fancy about it? Well, I'll tell you. It's stealthy, high crits, combo setup. And you're going to look at me and say, okay, so what? Combo setup gun, I don't get it. If an enemy is flanked and they are hit by the agent, no matter what weapon the agent fires at the beginning of the combo, the agent always follows up with that double punch. So, let's say I'm using Hogun, and Hogun flanks the entire enemy team. I shoot the agent with the restored Wellrod pistol. It lands, and it places combo setup on the enemy agent. My agent is now hitting a flanked person, so after shooting the gun, I immediately follow up with a double fist. Combo setup is on the target. I consume the combo setup for lots of bonus damage right there. This is a really, really, really secret and fun interaction on the game that takes advantage of the mechanics of the game, that your agent always follows up on flanked with melee punches. Now, if I was hitting somebody with the elite ISO, yeah, I'd be in trouble. I'd be causing drains. But that was done in the game at the time of this. So all you have to do is flank somebody, have the agent shoot him with the Wellrod pistol, bonus damage, and also bonus damage from having combo setup. The Smart Set. I want to get this set again on theory because I spent a lot of time farming the big guns in the Smart Set. If you don't remember what the Smart Set was, it essentially was good gear for the poor man. These all dropped in missions, and all you had to do was farm them. They didn't require gold, they didn't require getting lucky in a spec ops or PvP season. You just needed to take the time to farm the gear, and it was called the Smart Set, and they had synergy with each other. Unfortunately, Playdom nerfed this set into the ground, and it said, hey, pores, you're not going to be able to enjoy this good set that had PvP ramifications. You're not going to be able to enjoy it. So, haha, fuck you, spend money on the game. That's not going to happen in Redux, but there, at least at this time, is no desire to unnerf this set. I personally would like to push for this set to be fixed, but the big key here was the Revolt 5. Basically, you used it and got 6 pieces originally of free action ammo. So all you had to do was reload it, and then you could go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The power supply says anytime you attack with a smart weapon, any of your other smart weapons can follow up. So do the math. You have the power supply, you shoot people with a fully ammoed up Revolt 5, and you could potentially follow up with another smart weapon such as the Gauntlet or the Chaos Shot, etc. It activated people like Hogun, it activated people like Rocket Raccoon, Spider-Man Noir, etc, etc, etc. That's why the set was really good, and then play dumb shit on it. The Power Gauntlet says anytime you attack with any other smart weapon, the Power Gauntlet's damage goes up. Again, do the math in your head. If you're attacking with 6 shots in one round from the Revolt, that's 6 boosts to the Power Gauntlet, and anytime any of your other smart weapons fire because of the power supply, like the Blade, or the Chaos Shot, or the Depleter, or the Sling Cannon, or the Stun Baton, the Gauntlet was powering up that much more, and as you saw in the little blip on the Gauntlet, attacking doesn't consume the charge. So the Power Gauntlet continues to stack and stack and stack and stack. When the Revolt was nerfed, the whole fucking set fell apart. Shame on you, Playdom. You just crapped on the people who didn't want to pay out the nose to keep up with gear. The actual good set that people could farm, you nerfed into the ground. The power for... What do I need to say about this? Everybody was farming this back in the day. Your agent takes 4 turns in a row and then dies. The phylactery can bring somebody back. Just remember that. There are wicked combos that I want to try to get into with the power for the phylactery, the Scroll of Aknazak, aka the Scroll of Uncle Zach. There are so many devious things in my mind that I want to try once I get my hands on the PO4. I cannot wait until I can start farming the gear for it. Custom Possessed Pistol, I farmed for this piece of gear for a long time. This thing is an obliterator. This thing does so much damage. It's based on the hood. It's a farmable piece of gear. It's a good piece of early game gear. Absolute fucking home wrecker. This piece of gear. Splinter of Night. This was a weapon that would follow up on anybody who has Dark Void. It causes Dark Void. Therefore, it can actually follow up on itself. If you swing this at somebody and it causes Dark Void, it can then immediately follow up on them. I actually had a long-standing fight, passive fight, with friend of the channel, JW, back when I used to stream, because he didn't believe it could follow up on itself, and then it happened on stream, and he was like, holy shit. I stand corrected, and I was like, I told you so. And really good piece of gear if you're running Magic teams, goes really well with Doctor Strange. Not the strongest thing in the world, but it does cause Bane, which means magic damage does more. You're causing Dark Void, which is magic. You can follow up on... It's just a fun piece of gear. Plus, if you're in a really tech-heavy meta, it halves damage from tech attacks. Similar to the Splinter of Night, but slightly different. The Master Sword, which I believe kind of owes itself to Legend of Zelda. The Master Sword has a 50% chance to follow up on attacks that are staggered, have distraction, off-balance, poison, or dizzy. It is an opportunist weapon that causes cornered, exhausted, impaired, neutralized, staggered, or winded. Little piece of information for you guys, in case you never knew this about the game. Any piece of gear that causes opportunist always causes staggered. Always causes staggered unless the person is protected against it. See right here? 100% of the time. Staggered. These other ones have a chance to proc when you cause opportunity debuffs. Staggered is guaranteed to happen. Did you know that? And what is so special about that? The Hugins Eye cannot avoid melee attacks if you are staggered. That was the big counter to the Hugins Eye Elite ISO meta, is to land staggered on the agent and they can no longer dodge everything like they are fucking Sonic the Hedgehog at high speeds. And yes, the Master Sword can follow up on itself. The Manvatara. This is a piece of gear that was based off of Kang. It came from the Kang Spec Ops. It is temporal. It is an AoE, and it was one of the best ways of shutting down the Hugins Eye when the Hugins Eye was popular because of that 100% guarantee of staggered, like I just said. Because it was temporal, nobody could protect the agent from getting hit by it, and because it does it 100% of the time, swipe the Manvatara once, the agent can't dodge anymore, go to town on the agent, Bob's your uncle. The Manvatara was the best thing for it. There was other things that caused staggered, but they had cooldowns. Including the one piece of gear that I really, really want. Day one, when Redux goes live and final and everything, I got it from the pre-beta awards, pre-beta rewards from Marvel Avengers Alliance back in the day. Some of you know what it is. It's a special piece of gear you could not get in the game unless you had a code, but it had a 4-round cooldown. I won't talk about it on this one. I'll see if you guys can figure out what it is. Here's the Hugins Eye. I definitely would love to get the Hugins Eye when it's available. It came from a PvP season. It said you had a high chance to avoid unarmed attacks. And it just basically worked on anything that was melee at the time. It got nerfed a little bit. It also removed True Strike. It gave you many shot. Nobody really ever used it for the Manny shot. They just, excuse me. Yeah, the Manny shot. They just used it for the dodging. And it was ridiculously overpowered for some time. And then eventually got a bit of a nerf. The Dark Energy Blade. This thing was a bane of PvP down in the last maybe year or so. Let's see, when was 26? Yeah. Almost the entire last year of the game. December 18th, 2015. Date ended January 11th, 2016. The Dark Energy Blade was one of the most frustrating pieces of gear in PvP. It caused the agent to protect. You may get an extra turn. So now you don't need the EISO that does this. There is an EISO for bruisers that says if you protect, you get an extra turn. Well, it also procced if the agent just straight up got attacked. You don't need that ISO anymore if you're running the Deb. You gain Dominate the Weak, you gain Deflect. It interrupts ranged and buff or debuff actions. So if the enemy team went to go, say, use the cube in the Blackest Void, the Deb had a chance to hit the agent, stop it from happening. No Blackest Void. Elsa, who was all like ranged base and debuff based, the Deb chewed the shit out of her. It's why I had to abandon Elsa in PvP, because unless she was stealthy, the Deb had her number and was all over her. This was such a rough piece of gear to go against, but I liked it. There was also another weapon that looked like a hilt. The Spirit Blade. Yeah, not the Spirit Edge. Spirit Edge was pretty good. It's kind of like the Signpost in that it did a drain, but it also left drained energy. But it is the Spirit Blade right over here. Oh, man. This thing. All enemies get breakdown. They're hexed. They're drained energy. Energy drain. This was kind of like a Signpost on speed. This was a rough piece of gear to go against because it also did magic warding. It protects against single target attacks. Another good piece of gear, very similar to the Deb. One of the items that I used to make a lot of teams around, including my first Adamantium team, Mark of the Brotherhood. Another piece of gear not a lot of people got, as it came from Spec Ops 19, but phenomenal for mutants. Allied mutants gain rally and morale boost, and it makes the next buff action a quick action. So giving mutants rally, pretty solid. This was really good for Psylocke at the time, before she had the ISOs and everything, in the fact that she could use her shield as a quick action and then still attack. Plus, morale boost was really good. I used to use this with X-Force Psylocke and X-Force Archangel. Now, finally, there are two remaining pieces of gear that I want to talk about. They are both Savage pieces of gear, and it is the Spear and the Axe. And there is a specific reason why I want to do this. You'll see that the Savage Spear causes Touch of the Savage Land. Hit points, defense, attack, and accuracy increased by 10%. Now let's look at the Savage Axe. If these ads stop getting in the way. Attack and accuracy reduced by 10%. These two pieces of gear are additive. So whatever your percentage of attack is, this increases it by 10. The Savage Spear increases it by 10. If you have strengthened by, for example, the Roaring Thunder, that's attack by 25. Now, with three pieces of gear, look what you've done. Your attack is increased by 10. Your attack is increased by 10. Your attack is increased by 25% when strengthen is on you. If all you need to do is something like a kicks like a mule piece of gear, or the custom possessed pistol, anything that just does a lot of damage, and you have Roaring Thunder, and you have two Savage items, or you have something that causes strengthened, like the Blade of the Guardian does Rising Up, you might get strengthened from that. Just get yourself strengthened and run two pieces of the Savage gear, and it goes crazy. Use the Prism with it. It goes crazy. The interactivity of things in this game, if you just stopped and thought and let your mind go into devious spots, is incredible. I did this back in the day. I ran a Roaring Thunder and a Savage Axe and the Savage Spear, and I set up monstrous amounts of single target damage. Here, if you ran the Savage Cuddle, deals extra damage on critical hits. Just find a way of making your agent have an increased chance of crits and everything like that. It was, oh boy. It was an absolute murder fest. Or if you hit somebody with like armor reducing items or defense reducing items, and then you hit them with the combo, crazy stuff. So yeah, I'm very much looking to get a Spear and an Axe again, and things that cause strengthen, and just go to town on one shot. So a good combination there would be to use Roaring Thunder, have two Savage gears, and then hit somebody with, not Roaring Thunder, where's Roar of the North? There it is. Stupid ads getting in the way. This gun was known for being one of the hardest hitting pieces of gear in the entire game. Look at that right there. 4294 to 5152. Just have the Spear, the Axe, get strengthened on you, hit somebody with the Roar of the North, just deleted. Yeah, your agent's going to be stunned for a round, but there are things you could do to prevent the stun and everything. Murder. Absolute murder fest over there. So the agent does not gain kicks like a mule if the enemy dodges an attack, so that's fun. Anyway, That, folks, is the end of this video. That is some of the gear that I'm looking for the most. Some honorable mentions: the the Neuropurge, the Neurotrope, of course, the Mystic, the Cube, the Weather Control Device, the Quit, that handgun called the QYIT, something like that. That was a fun piece of gear. Love the Quit. The Spear of the Savant, which makes the agent start with a shield, is fun. The Voodoo Staff thing, that was related to Dr. Voodoo, is something I'd also like to get. I mean, there's definitely some other things, but I wanted to deal with some things that seem less than obvious and also talk about why I want to farm them and the absolute fun that gear can lead to, like that Well-Rod Silence pistol. You had to really think and pay attention to that thing and be like, okay, so a gun that makes combo setup, that seems really weird. But once you combine it with flank, you've just unlocked a whole level of thinking there that is, just absolutely out of this world. So anyway, one of the other pieces of gear that I really want to get is that the gear that summons the Sentinels in that set. I'm forgetting it off at the top of my head, but I know what it looks like. But it's the gear. I think it was somewhere around Bastion. It was around the time that Bastion was around. That's when it was dropping. It summons Sentinels. It was a very tech. I think it was called the tech set or something intelligent set. Let me see. Integrated intelligence set. Yeah, there we go. This is another one I'd like to farm when it happens. Master Key was solid. If you ran the whole set, it was fun. But the 0 Day was pretty cool. The Master Key was decent. The calculated response debuffs the enemy that hits you by causing disadvantage. So, like, if a scrapper hit you, they wouldn't be able to do follow-up attacks. Not the best set overall to run as a 4-piece, but if you ran it when the 5th slot opened up, it really was not too bad. It was fun. It was a little bit of a meme set. It wasn't super great, but Cufflink was pretty solid when you got to use it with the set and everything. And actually, the Master Key did some reasonable damage over here, and it also caused electrified hemorrhaging. Yeah, anyway, fun set. Not something super important, but something I'd like to get when it's available. So let me know what you are looking forward to farming down below when it comes up, be it a Spec Ops or a PvP season. Tell me what gear you're really looking to get. Don't worry about the Cube and the Mystic and the Weather Control Device as much. We kind of know that everybody wants those, but I'll call it fair game if you really want those pieces of gear because you never had them in Marvel Avengers Alliance when it was live. So that's fair too. You can write that in if you never got the cube but always really wanted it. So, all right, guys, Napalm Dawn signing off. Hope you enjoyed the video.